Aloha. In today's lesson, we're going to be talking about detecting ranges using logical operators. So the logical operators we're going to be using are and, or, and not. So let me go ahead and share my VS Code view with you. I've written up a little bit of code here today that I wanted to share with you. So if you look over here, I'm going to uncomment this. So we've got three different ones we're going to be discussing, and, or, and not. The first one, and, works in this way. And if you've got operands on both sides of the and, so if both of those are true, then this expression returns true. If one or the other is false, the entire thing returns false. So note that in Python, true and false are keywords, in other words, reserved words, and they're capitalized. Only the first letter is capitalized. And if you do true with capital T, true, and it's not the same as TRUE in all caps. You have to be very, if you're using it as a Boolean, it has to be true with just the capital T. So keep that in mind. So, and as we mentioned before, true and false are what we call Boolean values. So we're going to take a look at using the and operator that we just talked about. So we're going to run this code and we get true, false, false, false. And that's expected because, as I mentioned, it has to be true and true to return true. And if there's a false on either side, it's going to be false that comes back. And that's what we see over here. So the next thing we're going to test out is the or operator. So if we look at the or operator, or is a little bit different in that for the or to return true, only one side of the, only one operand has to be true. So you can have something that's true or something that's false, and that's going to return true. The opposite is true. Let's take a look at these values here. So we're going to run this code right there. So just to get an idea of what we think this should be, true or true, that should return true. True or false, that should return true. False or true, returns true. False and false, not. That's going to return false. So we expect 3 trues and a false from here. So let's take a look. Let's clear our results and run it. And sure enough, we get 3 trues followed by a false. So the last operator we're going to talk about here is the not operator. So the not basically has the effect of reversing whatever Boolean you have. So if you have something that evaluates to true and you put a not in front of it, it makes it false, and the opposite is true for the other side. So if we take this and we try to run this, let's go ahead and clear our little screen, and we run it. Oh, I didn't save it. Hold on just a second. So give it just a second and run it again. And we have false and true, which we expect because the opposite of true is false, the opposite of false is true. So that works as we expected. Let's go ahead and comment that out. So remember from the last video when we were talking about A is less than B is less than C, we can actually write that as a combination here using that and. So when we look at that A less than B less than C, that's really the same thing as saying A less than B and B is less than C. So are they equivalent? Let's take a look. So we'll go ahead and uncomment this. This is an easy to understand example. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3. So we're going to take this here. We're going to uncomment that. What I'm doing here is I'm putting, if you look over here, I'm putting A is less than B is less than C. Equality, I'm checking for equality to A is less than B and B is less than C. And if we think this is true and we run it, then we get true. It's actually true. And then to make sure that the opposite is not true, we can, or not the opposite, but if we put in the bang equals the not equal to, and we run that, we're going to get false because A is equal to that, and testing that should come back false. So that was a nifty, neato little test of that. So we'll comment out this code. So now we're going to revisit some stuff that we talked about before. We're going to use our letter grader that we had before, testing the ranges. before we had something which, when you're testing ranges as we did before, and you're just saying, okay, look at the first ones, anything from 0 to 60 is going to be an F. And then when you do the else for the next line, you're going to say anything that's greater than 60. You implicitly know that it's not going to be an F at this point if you get to the second part of the code, because you've already gone through this part. It didn't fire here, so you know that it wasn't anything there. So that's implicit. So now we're just testing the next range between 60 and 69. So that's what we refer to as implicit, but we can actually take that and make it explicit. How would we do that? Well, we'd use our and statements from before. We'd go in here and we'd say, actually, this is, we'd just go ahead and let's take all this code. I didn't realize then that I was looking at the rewritten code. What I meant to show was that when we're looking up here, we had that else statement, like the number grade is greater than 80. At that point, because we know that it isn't greater than or equal to 90, so saying it's greater than or equal to 80 means the range is between 80 and 89. So we're doing that. We know that is implicit. It's something we already know based on what we've already evaluated. So in order to fully, explicitly say it, we can say, okay, is our number grade greater than or equal to 0? And is the number grade less than or equal to less than 60? And that explicitly says what the range is. So then in the next one, the else, you're going to be very explicit. You're not going to rely on what you knew from the first one not firing. You're going to say essentially that if the number is greater than or equal to 60 and the number grade is less than 70, then fire this. So you do that for each range. You actually are specifying your bottom range and your top range, and you're not relying on the implicit assumption that we got this far and therefore it couldn't have been one of these numbers. So that's how this works. And if we test it again, we're going to start with an A. Hopefully we will get an A, and indeed we do. Let's go with a 53, and if we do a 53 there, as you would expect, we're not getting a good grade. So if we do check, it's an F. Sad to say. And we can check different things, like let's see what happens when we're right on the dot with 70. So if we put a 70 here, and then we go to run it with 70, what do we expect to get? Sure enough, we get a C. So this is how we take the implicit and make it explicit. And that's kind of like just making doubly sure that you're going to get the right results. So this has been a rather short chapter or a short section here. So take a breath and get ready for the next section. I'll see you soon.